Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Awesome TCG Discussions coming at you with a discussion video today where I talk about basically value, and that's part of the discussion, but deck building and what I kind of like look for in a deck. There are lots of things I like about different playstyles of Dragon Ball. I think that Dragon Ball is a very versatile game where you can adjust basically like what you need to do against your opponent based on like what your deck's trying to do, maybe what your game plan is. Maybe it's a flat out wall that you want to build, maybe it's pitch cards from their hand, whatever. Dragon Ball basically suits all play styles. But how should you build your deck? This is going to also tie into my other video about net decking that's coming soon. But I wanted to kind of, in a lot of ways, discuss what you should be looking for in your decks. And I'm going to talk about a couple combos from my most recent deck that I've been playing for a while. You guys have seen the Christmas gift that I've uploaded that is on the channel. That was my Soul Striker deck. I hope you guys really enjoyed that. And just things that you should be looking to do. Combos in Dragon Ball are very important, unlike combos in Yu-Gi-Oh, which basically build a wall and say either get past me or I'm going to do something so powerful that you can't be stopped, or something so powerful, sorry, that you can't stop me, or something to the effect that you just have this really strong game plan going into it that you're trying to initiate. Dragon Ball kind of works in that regard, that there's an idea behind the deck. So you just try to continue to play cards either a support that ideas outright and specifically, or you just adjust and take things as you go and build things up. So a good example of like a raw combo deck would be something like BR Red Brawly, right? A lot of the in-house cards of that feed off of each other. You got the one drop that gets you the BA, that gets you something else. The leader searches something that can initiate this whole play, the Paragus, so on and so forth. So you can kind of see how like that can be a little combo strategy in itself. The deck has a lot of good in-house pressure pieces and tools to like rip cards from your opponent's hand to allow this pressure to go through. You know, a lot of big power plays with critical, so on and so forth. Another deck to think about is the newest set 15 Red Brawly, a deck that I am personally a fan of, but I think it's just missing some good pieces to make it what it needs to be. But when you look at a deck specifically, sometimes it's just not obvious, right? Like what should I put in this deck? What should I be looking for? And I'm gonna talk again in more detail about this with my discussion video on net decking and how you should be building your decks more specifically when it comes to net decking and what you should be looking at, so on and so forth. But I just really want to talk about how synergy plays a very big part. Synergy specifically is something you should always be considering when you look at your deck. It's very, very important because in Dragon Ball, a lot of what goes on in your deck, in the game, so on and so forth, is how certain cards initiate a strategy and allow you to continue to push that strategy forward. And it's also really important to understand if that synergy gets interrupted, what does your deck do? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about two cards to start, and that's Soul Striker and this Draw Ape guy. So to start off, Soul Striker is already, in my opinion, one of the most powerful leaders ever to exist. It's probably honestly a ban-worthy leader because, and I've explained this to a lot of people, but they are never going to agree because they're going to think that like Soul Striker, don't touch my Soul Striker. But I'm a very fair person when it comes to decks, even decks that I play, right? And I've had my biases in the past with like Dark Brawly and so on. But just to talk about these two cards for a second. So when you enter your Awaken turn, which can be with 8 life, 7 life, doesn't matter, or at 4 or less, you draw 2 to Awaken. And you can swing with this after you've tapped 2 to untap the 2 energy you pay for this and draw a card off this, and then you'll draw 2 more for the Ape. That's a neat little combo, right? So technically you drew 2 off your Awaken, you tapped 2, you drew 2 more cards for the Ape, and then you swung, you drew again off your leader, you got that energy back, those resources. It's part of the reason why I'm playing Soul Striker, because I think that Soul Striker maximizes Blue's efficient cards as well as its support cards like this. And that's kind of something you should be looking at when it comes to deck synergy. When I look at that combo, right, what I just explained, I think of not that in terms of just raw numbers advantage, but how powerful of a turn was that really, okay? That was actually a Surge Awaken effect on steroids, okay? So that was, most Surge leaders, for example, Cell Surge, you take 2 cards from your hand, you put them under that leader. You draw 2 cards, so it replaces the cards you got, but you also got 2 energy back. Sound fair? Now, think of this play with Soul Striker. I drew 2 cards to Awaken. I drew 2 more cards off the Ape. I drew another card with my leader, and I untapped 2 energy. I am 3 more cards above my opponent. Technically 5 because you take 2 to put it underneath. But Cell Surge is Cell Surge. So with that, you're getting a stun effect or you're getting a rip and a destruction. Technically, you break even a little bit there because Soul Striker is going to, in terms of raw advantage, your opponent -2 and you plussed immensely there. So the thing that's difficult to kind of grasp is how this occurs every single turn. And when you're talking about synergy with your decks, these are the things that you need to work out. So like if you have like a minus effect with like the promo Vegeta, baby Vegeta, or Vegeta baby, I should say, the politically correct way to pronounce the card. You got this minus effect that can help you self-awaken, so that's a plus. You swing at the leader, you draw a card, that could potentially be another plus. That -5 is gonna, take something out. The other effect on the back to -2 cards, I think 10. I can't remember what it does per se on that. You're gonna swing, you're gonna draw a card. I actually have it right here. I know this is probably bad to not have this prepped right away, but it's just something that I was thinking about. But point being is that like you can look at specific cards that help support your strategy. And this is something really good to pay attention to, because if you don't, you could run the risk of maybe building your deck in a suboptimal way or in a way that is not as beneficial as it could be. And so this is a really good place that you want to start off with. I have the leader right here. This is a really good place that you want to start off with when you're building your decks, right? You want to be able to think about all the ways that this deck has a specific strategy. Maybe it's the leader, and the leader does the majority of the carrying for Soul Striker. I think that and it's that powerful, right? The next best leader that even remotely does what this does is probably going to be SS3, which is broken in its own right. There's plenty of things about SS3 that are just completely ridiculous. But you also have to take a look at just what Soul Striker generates just right away raw. And I think that being able to awaken at 8 life, if your opponent's trying to play that stall game, Cell Surge certainly does, that they will be very punished for it in the end, because even if they rip your hand to 0, it's going to be really hard. And I actually have a story about that. I've played against Soul Surge recently with Soul Striker, and I did in fact lose all of my hand before I awakened. And I had multiple draw apes in the draw up area. And by the time I finally was able to awaken, I had 4 or 5 energy. The cards they were adding to my life to my hand, they swung with like a Brawly Unison, which has double strike, so that's going to be 2. I swung with like a crit guy, I lost a card, I swung with something else, made it 15, I drew a card, then I drew 2 to awaken. So I went from having no cards in hand to 5, I drew 2 more with my leader, but I had 3 draw apes in the draw up area. So I tapped 2, drew 2, tapped 2, drew 2, swung, untapped 2, drew a card, tapped 2 again, and now that 5 went from 5 to 12, okay? You can see how that's kind of ridiculous, and you should always be looking for synergy for that. So like with this Vegeta Baby Leader, choose one of your battle cards, it loses 15k, and then choose up to 2 of your opponent's battle cards, and they lose 10k for the duration of the turn. You can see how that's really powerful, and you want to like have effects that help support that. So if you have effects that minus on your turn, this would be really powerful, and those are cards that you should be generally looking at in the game to kind of help further that forward. Some cards that immediately come to mind would be like red-blue cards, like a Rival Cooler, Boo, so on and so forth. And just taking a look at how powerful that can be as a strategy is, and what your leader does, helping maximize that can be the key to giving you success. The fact that this leader has Self-Awaken on its backside, that also removes a card. Cards like DMS, True Fighting Spirit, the Vegeta True Fighting Spirit, so Goku and Vegeta, I should say. Both of those cards, not really doing that much. A blocker that's 5k, get it out. The Kai that warps a card when it comes in, get it out. And this leader can Self-Awaken while doing that. And I think that's just really overall super powerful. And this is one of my favorite leaders that's ever existed in the game. Unfortunately, it's just not as good. But when we consider, right, what leaders want to do, and we also have to think about the long game effectiveness. What do we have? So that's going to bring me to this next combo, which is these 2 cards. And I do have the Gogeta here, and I'll talk about these 2 in a second. But these 2 cards, okay? So Boonison, I did not talk about this in my Soul Striker deck profile, but this essentially makes my leader a Cell Surge Awaken / UI Goku Awaken combined every single turn. How does it make that? This card has a +0 that is going to draw me a card. Okay. It's also going to untap an energy and untap him at the end of the turn, which is ridiculous. My leader is going to draw me a card and untap 2. This basically means every single turn while this card's on the board, it is technically an untap 3, draw 2. When you think about that in raw numbers, that's really strong on the defensive side. It's really powerful on the offensive side. This Boonison makes it so that I can actually tap out with my turn. If I have 5 energy going into that, and I have all these guys in my drop area, I could draw all day long while this is on the board, and then, lo and behold, untap an energy, right, at the end of my turn, giving me 2 back if I'm at 5, right? So I have 2 energy to defend myself. My D-Magics and Beans get way stronger. Also, when you think about this card, you have that 2 energy for defense. This card is inherently a defensive card. It's -1 bottom deck's a battle card. When your opponent attacks with a battle card, it itself is a blocker. It having 4 markers is really powerful for God Sealing, so on and so forth. And so when you look at that, you can see the value generation. Now, the only card you really have to worry about is Supreme Kai of Space-Time Unraveler, but you have God Sealing for that, and other cards that can help you mitigate that if you have them on the board presently. But it's just one of those things that you have to keep a consistent eye out for. I want to talk about a little bit of an offensive combo with these 2 cards. And by the way, when I was building Soul Striker, I had no idea where I was going to start. I had a friend, I had a blue-yellow list that I wanted to try because I thought blue-yellow was really powerful. I do not own the baby unison that most blue-yellow decks play, but after looking at is it Hyper Evolution? Oh no, it's Super Warrior Evolution, sorry. Hyper Evolution's the SS4 SCR. When I was looking at that card, I thought to myself, man, like, Baby Unison is great for protecting your God Sealing, but what about the games you don't have God Sealing? Seems a little bit weird, right? It's also good at enabling your counters, but the thing is that's a -5. Yeah, it gives your leader double strike, but then your Unison's going to be incredibly weak. Your God Sealings might not be as good, but in terms of raw advantage, you do draw a card for Unison that gives itself 2 markers, which is really powerful. And then you're going to draw a card on tap 2. So it's not as bad as you might think, but it doesn't have any defensive pressure and it is technically at 15k, so it's going to be a little bit easier to get at. When I was looking at this card specifically, the Super Warrior Evolution, a lot of things struck me as being really powerful. One, I have lots of Saiyans that are blue in this deck. Lots of them. I have a friend, shout out to Brand Troidel, who's been playing mono blue Soul Striker skillless for a hot minute. And he's only missing one card, Baby Hatchiyak, for it. But when I was playing blue-yellow, even though I had Baby Hatchiyak, I was actually losing game after game after game after game. And why was I losing game after game after game? Because one, skillless Soul Striker, when you commit to a skillless build, can actually generate an ungodly number of Saiyans in rest mode, which basically means kill a Unison or else, which is really bad. When you attack the Unison, he'd block or negate with it because he plays like the Gohans, D-Magic, so on and so forth. If you block, he'd then buff the Unison with like a bean or something, making it even more costly for me to get at. And then there's the fact that if I played anything that could do any real damage to it, he's playing a blue deck, which has God Sealing. So you can see how the offense mixed with the defense is really ridiculous. And this is all before we talk about Baby Hatchiyak. And then it kind of dawned on me, like maybe Baby Blue-Yellow, not as strong as I would like it to be. Rivaling the Kefla is really powerful, but without another Kefla in hand, her effect is a little bit lackluster. Yeah, I get a 30k that's going to basically be a, what is it called? The Shugesh Kid Goku combo that used to pop a card in rest mode. You get to bottom deck a card ignoring barrier. Yeah, that's really powerful. But then at the end of the day, like if I didn't have that, I really had nothing. So it also required me to play cards like Zamasu, which is the other blue super combo that I forgot about in my deck profile. But Zamasu is not a card that generates other card advantage. So against decks like Cell Surge, which is a very rampant and very powerful deck, it's going to eventually cost me cards. And that's not an avenue that I really wanted to walk down. And so eventually I scrapped the blue-yellow build and looked at the skillless cards because I thought, one, the 10-drop Gohan's really powerful at board wiping. Two, this Unison's -1 is completely broken. It can generate another attacker. It can reset its dual attack, which can swing 3 times in a turn. It's got enough markers to still have a God Sealing. It's an awakened target for the leader. And to make it even better, it's got that protection effect. So I thought to myself, well, this is ridiculous. You can't go wrong here. And the only card I was missing as a piece to it was this Gohan. And this Gohan solved a lot of my problems almost immediately, and that's why it's in the deck. I cut some other cards that I was playing in there that, just weren't as good. But then once like I said, I've been working on this deck for about a month and playing it over and over again, testing. I think I probably now have literally somewhere over 2 days straight time actually just playing Soul Striker as it's currently constructed. And up to its current construction. And that is what led me to this card right here, this Super Warrior Evolution. So what's really broken about this compared to the Baby Unison, for example, is that it gives me my Awaken, which is what I want. It gives me a removal, which is what I want. It gives me protection, which is what I want. It's enough for God Sealing, which is again what I want. And then to top it off, if I want to, I can switch to an offensive strategy that gets really, really powerful against my opponent. So when we talk about deck synergy, right, it took me a couple weeks to really grind that down and just do the raw math on what I'm wanting out of my deck and looking for. And that's when I decided to look at this card again in Soul Striker, because let's be real, if you don't have, let's say you're at turn 5 and you want to do the Baby Hatch combo that I talked about in my deck profile. Well, guess what? You can tap 2, draw 2 more cards, and just pass. After you swing with your leader, of course. So technically you drew 3 and untapped 2, which is ridiculous. That's the same thing as like a better Soul UI Goku Invoker Leader Awaken, right? It's basically doing the same thing. And it just like, whew, man, right? Like it just really came together, meshed together to finally provide what I was looking for with this leader. So when it comes to deck synergy, it might take you a little bit of time. It might take some practice. It might take some plays. But the thing is that I watch this with a lot of my friends in particular. They'll build a deck and then they'll either have high success with it or they'll call it trash. They'll build a deck and they'll say, this is what supports the strategy, so this is what I have to play, without maybe looking at some other cards. And so, as you can see, when it comes to these three cards in particular, I have really worked out their place in the deck, their function, so to say, and how it synergizes with my leader. The same thing with Cell Search, right? Like if there was a really strong green-yellow card that came out, of course you would look at it for Cell Search, right? And these are the things that you kind of want to keep in mind when you're looking at deck synergy. And I bring this combo to your attention with these two cards specifically because it just really matters, right? Like what you have here. I mean, this card's ridiculous. I said this in a Facebook group chat when I saw this card. I thought it was way more broken than what it was because I forgot that unison effects are only once per turn. I thought this thing could literally just -4 and just annihilate your opponent's entire board if they ever attacked it. But you gotta think about this. This is a 20k double striker. It's a 20k unison, which is gonna cost cards for your opponent generally to get out unless they have like some big attackers. It's got 4 markers, which is going to protect from Godsling. It's a blocker, so if they're going to swing with lethal at your leader, you can block with it if you really, really have to, especially if it has only 1 marker. It's going to bounce a card, and then on your turn, it's an extra card and an extra energy back and an extra blocker, and it's free aggression because this card does not have to perform its block function. It doesn't have to stay active, not attacking, to perform its block function, which is what's really strong. And then with the leader, my gosh, this card costs 1. This is a swing with my leader on tap 2, and then I'm going to draw a card and do that. And let's talk about these 2 cards for a second. If this is in my drop area, while this leader's awakened, which it will be, and I have this card on board, basically that means this. I can tap 4 for this, draw a card, swing, it's going to untap, and I'm going to untap an energy at the end of the turn. Swing with a 20k double striker. Swing with my leader. Untap 2. Tap 2 for this, and then pass my turn knowing I have a blocker, a minus on the unison effect, and I'm going to get an energy back. So what just happened there? I untapped 3 energy. I drew 4 cards and put pressure on at least 2 attacks wherever I wanted. One is a 20k double striker, one was 15. And so you can really see how the synergy really matters here. With this card, and I already explained the combo, the fact that it loses a marker, gains its dual attack back, gets to put pressure, is defensive in and of itself, removes 2 of my opponent's big cards. Like, let's say they committed like 4 or 5 energy or 2 or 3 energy to playing a really powerful card. Well, if it doesn't have barrier, it's gone. And that's really strong. If I needed to remove 2 blockers, I could play this down, minus it, get rid of the blockers, swing with my leader. This whole play cost me 1, and it's going to generate 3 attacks. It's not like it's that backbreaking to do, which I've done. I've used this card as straight spot removal in the deck. So when you think about deck synergy, think about the cards and how they amalgamate together. And with these 3 cards, I think I've pretty well demonstrated like how at least my brain works when it comes to synergy. And there's lots of different strategies out there. Like obviously, SS3 Gogeta thwarting the Dark Empire is an incredibly broken card. It is even more broken in either Dark Brawly or Gogeta Xeno. Why? Well, with Dark Brawly, it's extra cards back for those Dark Brawly cards to remove to generate themselves to the board. With Gogeta Xeno, it is a free draw on top of warping a card and being a 25k double strike for 1 in a deck that naturally sets it up right away. So obviously, it was going to replace the TP that cost 3 energy and was basically a dual attack double strike. And that's just kind of what you have to think about when it comes to building decks and deck synergy. I really wanted to put this video out for you guys because I think this is a discussion video that might help you with deck building. I know a lot of people have questions about my deck specifically when it comes to decks. So that's where my mind is at. So if you see any of my deck profiles and you net deck them, please think about synergy wise what's going on here, because that's generally what I like to do. That's also what led me to Demigra's Secretary for Dark Brawly, because it was like, oh yeah, that's really stupid, because if I get to 4 turn 4 and they don't like God Sealing this card, I'm probably going to just outright win the game minus some other floodgate or something crazy happening. So yeah, I really encourage you guys to really think about synergy with your deck, because sometimes the problems to your deck can be solved by looking. This card has solved a lot of problems that I had with Soul Striker. Number one, it's cantrip removal. So like the Whis cantrip that's going to like prevent me from untapping, not a thing. Counter stuff against black, not a thing, right? I'm just going to be able to get rid of your True Fighting Spirits with this card. Barrier removal, which is another thing that was really important about this, is, you know, Slug was a really big problem with my drives, my super combos, my other elite, like Ape, Goku, whatever, what have you, right? That draws me cards, Boo, that draws me a card, right? It was really problematic. This card solved that problem immediately. And guess what this card is worth? 20 cents, right? It's worth next to nothing. I probably get a pre-release of this card for $1 because nobody really plays this card. But the thing is that value generated just by looking at this card, it's actually ridiculous. When you look at my unisons, when you look at the fact that I have skilllesses that get to be played for free, the fact that this is going to be a blocker to help protect Gogeta, the fact that it removed a card with barrier, the fact that it removes cantrips, the fact that it removes other cards on the board. Basically, this card is a one-catch-all that solves a lot of the problems that I'll have against meta decks or problems against my deck specifically. So, again, think about synergy when it comes to your deck. I hope you guys found this video useful and helpful to you. It shows you a little bit where my mind's at with things, and definitely where my mind went with Soul Striker. The cat's out of the bag with this deck. I'm going to tell you, I've been kind of like holding this deck back in the background. But it's not a deck that I could have probably contained for very long. I felt that it was a little too sweet to not bring to you guys. So I'm not full of myself at all by saying that. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really hope that if you try the Soul Striker deck, that it gives you a lot of success. If you have any questions about it, please let me know. Sequencing, how to handle certain things, situations, because it's not obvious. There's definitely things you can do to misplay, like I was playing against my wife the other day, and I had 5 energy open, and I Golden Avengered her, and she just power played the living destruction out of me with Demigra's Secretary and her like Dark Mass Saiyan leader, straight Gogeta nonsense with a bunch of really powerful black cards. So let me know what you guys think about this video in the comment section down below. Any questions you might have, anything I can help you with, and look forward to my next discussion video about what you need to be looking at in net decking and why net decking can be a problem for you, okay? And why it's actually unhealthy for a lot of players. So I will catch you guys next time, and this is Ash and TCG Discussions signing off. Later.